Hi, Eric.
Good morning. Hello, Anila. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, so for those of you who maybe have not attended one of these sessions before, I just wanted to give you a quick little overview of what we're going to do. So I'm going to start out with an general meditation. Hi, good morning. Um, and then we'll talk a little bit about the topic at hand, which is patience. And after that, we're going to do, like I said, group discussion, and then we're going to have 10 or 15 minutes to break into little groups or pairs rather, and you can talk about the topic of patience. I've got a couple of discussion questions that you can consider. And then we'll do the guided meditation, which is about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll do a general wrap up. So that is the overview of the class layout. So for the meditation, I invite you to settle into your meditation frame of mind, whatever that might mean for you. But sitting comfortably with your back straight, shoulders dropped, bringing your mind and attention inwards, using the breath as a way to direct that gaze away from the external stimuli, sounds and sensations, focusing on the rhythm of the breath for a little while. And doing so automatically, very naturally releases any remaining tension that you might be feeling in any part of your body, but just focusing on the breath, that natural rhythm. So we all want to be filled with peace, filled with peace and joy. And there isn't a single living being that wants to experience any kind of pain, any kind of discomfort or suffering. And that we're all the same. And so let's try to imagine what it would be like to be free from anger and annoyance and attachment, any kind of restless discontent. And above all, to be free from confusion, that blinding confusion, not knowing how to find meaning and direction in life. not being able to distinguish right from wrong. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Imagine being free of chasing hopes and dreams, as well as running from fear. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if there were no sense of losing part of ourselves or sacrificing something when we are humble, when we choose to be patient? No sense of loss, giving up something. Only joy. Imagine if instead of spending every minute of the day catering to our little tyrant, me, myself, and I, and managing the mental disease of our negative emotions, if we could instead enjoy the simple pleasure of showing up for others. Doing the best to help others, to serve others, while acknowledging our own limitations. That wish to always do more, to go a little further, to dig deeper, and yet maybe having to accept our inability to do so, our inability to help to the extent that someone needs help. Acceptance, really hard. We're always surrounded by kindness and sustained by countless living beings. Let us appreciate their helping hands, do everything we can to return their generosity. Understanding that our minds, that every moment of consciousness creates our subjective reality, our ordinary experience. That means that we can take charge. We can take ownership of our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions, instead of allowing them to run wild and pull us in all directions. Instead, we can make an effort so that we devote our lives to virtue. May we realize our fullest potential. May we achieve this supreme bliss of liberation, not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings without exception. Okay. Hmm. All right, so we've been talking about the 16 guidelines and ooh, sorry. So the 16 guidelines our different aspects of the people that we wish to become. That's one way of thinking about it, I think. And we spent about a month going through how we relate, talking about respect, forgiveness, gratitude, and loyalty. And then we, in the last class, talked about humility, and today we're on patience. We went back to how we think. And as you can tell, all of these ideas, all of these qualities that we seek to develop, are all very closely related. And so how we think, humility, patience, contentment, and delight, all of those pervade how we act, how we relate, and how we find meaning. So cultivating and perfecting humility, patience, contentment, and delight, by being able to do that, then we are able to act in a way that is most beneficial to others. We can relate to other people in a way that serves their needs, protects their or enhances their welfare as well as ours. And all of that comes together in creating meaning for our lives. And so, I'll put this away for a second. Everybody has to be patient with my. I don't think I got any better at this over the course of 6 weeks. I'm still. Oh, and okay, so patience, right? See, everybody's got to be patient. So I was thinking about this in terms of, so patience really comes down to, relationships, right? That's what we're going to be focusing on. It's not so much, patient because you were painting your house and you dropped a can of paint and you made a big mess. Like we're not talking about that kind of patience. We're talking about primarily like relationships. So if you would like a place to sit, there are cushions over there through the curtain on the left. There are cushions. We've got 2 empty seats here. So please make yourself comfortable. There's
I'm good like this.
really? Okay,
Yeah,
because there's
like-
places to sit. You can sit right here too.
Oh,
There's a space right here
Okay.
next to Mark. Yeah. So think about, I was thinking about doors. I was thinking about doors because I was thinking of keys. So think to yourself, how many sets of keys do you carry around? You could have keys to your own house. Maybe you've got a vacation house. You have multiple keys just for the house that you live in or the apartment that you live in, whatever, right? Maybe you have keys to your parents' home or your siblings' home or where you work, right? Where you volunteer. Like all those keys start to add up, right? I realize I've got a ton of keys. And so when you think about like each key is to a door, right? And so the analogy is like a doorway can be seen as an entryway, right, to a relationship, right? Because usually, you're opening the door to your workplace, right? We're opening the door to some kind of relationship with other beings. That's what we're trying to think. So the more keys that you're carrying, the more relationships you're probably in. And so the more relationships that you're in, then the more opportunities that you have to serve others, right? So that's in a positive sense, right? We want to have these relationships with others. Everybody wants to have friends, right? Everybody wants to enjoy that affection that comes with, friendship. Nobody wants to have enemies, right? You want to open the door to warm, supportive, loving relationships, not to like you open the door and it's like, some kind of monster comes popping out of the closet, right? No, 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 no. So, but our goal realistically, our goal is not for everybody to be our bestie, right? That's given our limitations, right? But so our goal is not to make everybody our best friend and then to send all of our enemies, on a SpaceX rocket to outer space, right? Like just send those enemies out of my life, right? I mean, and we know that that's not what we want. We know that that's impossible because there's no such thing as, like a permanent friend. There's no such thing as a permanent enemy, right? We know that from our own lives. Relationships change all the time. And so your bestie today can be, a stranger or even an enemy tomorrow. If you think of your relationship with your parents, for example, right? Your relationship with your parents today is much different from when you were a child. There are always those ups and downs, and so we need to. Um, the main issue here is not, like the main issue is we need to stop categorizing people. We need to stop that tendency to, put people into these different boxes, so to speak, right? So we get the friends box, the enemies box, the strangers box. And so instead of, slicing and dicing our relationships, instead we need to focus on what we all share in common, which is, that shared sense of humanity, right? So leaving aside all these, minor differences from the global perspective, we're all the same, right? And so being able to, rise above those petty differences gives us that capacity to nurture our loving kindness for all sentient beings. So, even if we can't do that now, right, we can't see everybody, equally, right? We're striving for this to create equanimity in our perspective, right? But, even if we haven't quite gotten there yet, even if we try to help others as much as we can, acknowledging our limitations, acknowledging that we can't save every animal from, or we can't save every child, all of those things, right? um, we still have to make an effort to do whatever we can, like I said, right? Don't allow our limitations to just paralyze us to the point that we don't do anything. So I definitely do that. I'm like the deer in the headlights, right? I just I just panic and I freeze and I can't do anything. So I'm reminding myself that that's not an appropriate reaction, and that any little bit of help that I can offer, maybe it's not the big things. Any tiny little bit is a way of serving others, of accumulating virtue, and that, by not discounting those small acts of kindness, that then they accumulate. You get into that habit. You can do a little bit, you take one step, tomorrow you take two steps, right? And slowly, you'll be able to do more and more and more. But if you don't try at all, then, you know, um, you'll never be able to change, right? So, by helping somebody else, it's like a 2-for-1 deal, right? We're happy, and so is the person that we're trying to help. Most of the time it works, right? Even if it's something very minor, most of the time it works. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. But like I said, at least we tried. We made an effort. Hmm. So the only mind, the only, person that we can change is our own mind, right? We can't change somebody else's mind, much as we try. You can give them the best advice, right? You can repeat the advice. You can repeat it again. You can try to twist the way you're saying it. But, the person can change their own, everybody can only, change their own mind. And sometimes that's difficult to accept, but it's, worth remembering over and over again. everybody has to do their own, inner work, right? It's up to them to make the choice. It's up to them to recognize what's going on. Um, we can be there on the sidelines, maybe coaching, being supportive, not criticizing, etc. But, we're all responsible for our own inner work, And so, as these 16 guidelines are just examples of qualities that we seek to develop, right? It's not the entire universe of qualities that we seek to develop, but it's a starting point to help us, develop meaningful relationships with ourselves and with others. And so, I would encourage you when you have a chance to go back through this course and anything that's related that helps us, be a little bit more specific, because it's very easy when you talk about like you come to a Buddhist talk or something, right? You think, oh, we talk about love and compassion, being kind to others and becoming a bodhisattva and becoming a Buddha and walking the spiritual path, right? But, what does it really mean on a day-to-day practical level? When we look inside ourselves, when we say, okay, I want to change my mind, I want to be a better person, right? But what does that really mean? And so I think the beauty of the 16 guidelines is it starts to help us be very concrete, very specific. Like, hey, you need to be more patient. You need to be more humble, right? More respectful, more kind. Why, right? So it's very specific in that sense because all of these qualities and many more, right? When we talk about like what it means to be a spiritual person, even what it means in this context in particular, what it means to become a bodhisattva, to become a Buddha, they personify, they embody all of these qualities, right? So good to know. Not just good to know intellectually, but let's do the work of getting there. Let's do this. Yeah. Any questions or comments so far?
I just want to know if we've missed previous classes, can we go back and watch the videos that we've missed?
Yeah, they're actually on the DNKL YouTube channel. I think I missed one. Which one did I forgot to record one of them. But anyway, most of them are there. And you can just fast forward through the section, like where we're doing the guided the breakout groups. Just fast forward through that part because that'll be really boring. So what I'm trying to say is we didn't edit the video, that they're just posted, live.
Okay.
So that
Thank
would
you.
have been. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Mhm.
So patience is closely related to humility, right? Because if we respect others, if we see them as our teachers, if we're not overcome by pride, then we can build, strong connections with others, right? Not surprisingly. So, as I mentioned earlier, like one of the greatest happinesses, our greatest pleasures is our connection with others, right? That's a source of great happiness. And yet at the same time, one of the greatest causes of unhappiness can be our relationships with others, right? If you're stuck in a bad relationship, then that can be, extremely stressful, extremely hard to work through. And so, those big drama fights, those big arguments that, can span days, weeks, even years, right? As well as, that silent cold shoulder treatment, when you pass somebody in the hallway, like, no eye contact, no, forget about saying anything, you're just like, I didn't see him, right? That happens. Okay, so, we need to dig deeper and figure out, what is the underlying cause for having, these difficult relationships. That's what we're trying to get at. And so, we understand rather that all of us arises due to our own minds, the negative emotions that we are so full of, as well as, our karma. And so karma and negative emotions together are identified as a cause of unhappiness, a cause of being reborn in samsara, right? And so, understanding the nature of the mind becomes, very helpful, very skillful. And so this topic of Buddhist psychology is very, very extensive, very detailed, absolutely fascinating. So I would encourage you, as you continue to learn more about Buddhism, that you look for, those specific teachings. Okay, so mind and mental factors, Buddhist psychology. There are many, many, many teachings on that. But just to pick out one main concept, when we talk about mind, what is mind? So mind is commonly defined as consciousness, right? So consciousness, it's that quality of the mind that is clear and knowing. So clear in the sense that the mind is able to reflect whatever appears to the sense consciousnesses, whether it's, an object such as, the microphone. Everybody always gives a microphone these days as the example, but whatever it might be, a person talking, the person next to you, you see them, you hear them, you can touch yourself, so that sense of tactility. So you have all the sense consciousnesses, and then the mental consciousness, which is what we're talking about here in terms of being clear and particularly in terms of knowing, right? So being able to comprehend or engage with the object in that sense. Yeah. So when we talk about that we always use the term mindfulness, right? Everybody's using the term mindfulness these days. So what does that actually include? So it has three different aspects. So the first, again, is cognition. So it's that action of the mind or activity of the mind. So the mind is always, engaging with whatever it comes into contact with all the time, right? We're always aware of our surroundings, or our inner experience, right? All the time, there's some level of either sensory consciousness or mental consciousness. Mental consciousness, you mean like a feeling, any kind of thought, like all of that, right? That's going on all the time, even when we're sleeping. Yeah, there's always some level of mental cognition going on. And then introspection, right? You've probably heard that term as well. Introspection is that ability of the mind to look inwards and check. You see what's going on, right? Introspection. We need to cultivate introspection as a skill to, before you say something, you look inside and see what's going on. Introspection is that skill, and it's closely related to what we're calling, alertness or vigilance, or mindfulness, is also used to refer to this ability of the mind to remember, right? To look back, to hold the object, to remember, right? So all of these come together, all these capabilities or aspects of the mind, all of these come together. And so when we talk about being aware of the mind, right? Then how do we do that? Well, we're recognizing the way in which things appear to the mind, right? So cognition, understanding how we're using introspection to watch the processes that are occurring, right? We're using our mindfulness, our alertness, our vigilance, again, to watch when the mind maybe strays away from the object that we're trying to focus on, right? So whether you're doing an analytical meditation on a subject such as patience, or you're engaged in, like stabilizing meditation, such as on the breath. So you use your alertness, you lose. When you lose the object, you use your alertness and vigilance to come back to the object, right? That's the little watchdog, the little alarm clock that says, come back. You're straying, you're thinking about lunch instead of thinking about the topic at hand, okay? So why are those important in terms of let's say, tackling anger? It could be anything. It could be cultivating virtue. Whatever it is, whenever we're trying to figure out what's going on in our own world, so to speak, right? Then we're going to need to examine our mind, right? Understanding the nature of the mind and applying, these tools, these techniques of introspection, of alertness, of vigilance, or mindfulness, right? Does that make any sense?
Mm.
Yeah, a little bit. Rings a bell. Okay, good. So then a quote from Geshe Yeshe Topten, talking about, what is suffering, or what are the causes of suffering. So our inner enemies are the mental afflictions. They have no legs or hands. They are neither wise nor strong, and they possess nothing whatsoever that makes them truly dreadful. It is we who allow them to cause us harm and suffering. I think I actually have that on a slide, believe it or not. Hang on one second. Oh, no. There we go. Look. There it is. That's just such a beautiful quote. And I know I've actually used this quote before, but it's just such a beautiful way of identifying the true cause of suffering, right? And so it's saying that, the problem isn't out there. It's not, the problem that I'm having in this relationship is not the other problem with the other person, right? The problem that I'm experiencing comes from my mental framing of the situation. And so, that puts the responsibility, that puts the ownership, that puts the resolution, back in our court, right? Because I can't change, the other person. I can only change my perspective, right? If my choice is, hey, I need to just remove myself from this situation because that's the best I can do right now, then so be it, right? And so, like I said, I think it's a really important in that sense that it gives us the ability, it opens the door. Oh boy, I really like doors. It opens the door to finding a way to make the situation, to transform it into an opportunity for growth instead of just, thinking that, oh my gosh, I have a problem with this person, I have a problem with that person, I have a problem with, yada, 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 right? And then how am I ever going to resolve all of them being, mean to me, right? Like, or how can I change all of their minds? How can I make them all, like me or at least tolerate me, right? I mean, I can't go in and change their minds in any way, right? Of course not physically, even just through conversations, more conversation and this and that. We do everything that we can, But what it really comes down to, is being able in our own minds to transform whoever we see as a difficult person into somebody who we think of as a teacher. Okay? Yeah. And so one way that we could do this is by recognizing the disadvantages of, for example, getting angry, right? By recognizing what's going to happen if we do get angry, then understanding the great harm that we cause, not just getting ourselves upset, getting the other person upset, and that has that ripple effect, right, of creating unhappiness, suffering, stress, not just in the other person, but maybe, the people surrounding that person. It just continues to multiply, creating negative actions, perhaps, that carry on not just in this life, but even in future lives. Okay. So that small spark can ignite, a big fire. So everything happens for a reason, and we are directly responsible for our experiences. If we make a point of identifying and stopping our negative emotions, as soon as they occur, right, even that tiny bit of irritation, um, then we're choosing freedom. We're choosing, happiness. So just because a thought arises, just because, a negative emotion arises, you don't have to give in, right? You don't have to follow it. You don't have to give it the stage and let it play out. That's a choice. That's a choice, right? And it comes back to that, what we were talking about with cultivating, awareness of how the mind works, of applying introspection, of applying mental vigilance, and keeping that alertness, keeping that watchdog on duty, so to speak, right? So, a funny example would just be you're late for an appointment and you're on one of these, narrow Connecticut roads. And you get stuck behind, somebody who's driving 40 miles an hour in like a 50-mile-an-hour speed zone, right? And so you're tailgating them and you're like, oh. And then, fast forward maybe a little bit later, and then, that happens like when you're 20 years old, and when you're 60 years old or something, right? Then you realize, geez, I'm the old person that's doing 40 in the 50-mile-an-hour zone, right? Especially at night, right? I'm like, hey, that's me, So anyway, it happens. Okay, so we're almost done. So going back to this idea of relationships, so what makes a relationship difficult then is, people seeing things differently, right? It all comes down to like perspective, right? Everybody, wants to find a resolution. Everybody wants to find some kind of way to move forward, but the devil is in the details. How do we negotiate? How do we compromise? How are we open to the other person's perspective? Are we genuinely curious and understanding where this person is coming from, right? So this involves a lot of patience, right? It's not something that you can always, resolve through a simple text message. It takes, a heartfelt openness and curiosity, a heartfelt willingness to be patient, to listen to other people, to try to understand where they're coming from, as well as, understanding your own perspective. What is it really rooted in? What am I hiding? What am I trying to assert, maybe? Yeah. Are you getting defensive? Are you just like saying something without putting on that filter? watching the mind. Yeah. Are you just stubbornly holding on to a position and not acknowledging your own mistakes, maybe? So understanding what I'm trying to say is, what is your contribution to the conflict? Yeah. Okay. Anything to share about that? Ever happened to you? Uh-huh.
Last week we talked about humility,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was a little conflicted about what humility and how it shows up in service versus getting your boundaries crashed. So if you're in service to somebody,
Right.
and then it really in the end feels like they've just run you over.
Sure.
What the
Sure.
distinction there? I've been sort of thinking about that all week, so
Yeah.
from your perspective.
I mean, I think it comes down really to just doing as much as we can, and while respecting your own boundaries, we're not at the point where, we can go whole hog into like the actions of a bodhisattva, where you're a true bodhisattva who is completely renounced, any attachment to his or herself, right? If somebody comes up and says, hey, could I have your right arm? They chop it off and happily give them the right arm. And then they say, oh, what about that left arm? Well, we're not there yet, right? Of course. So I think that as long as our heart is in the right place, as long as we're trying, then it's okay to say, and we have to be able to say, no, I'll meet you this far, I'll do this much, but I can't go, all the way. Right? It's really hard. It's heartbreaking, sometimes when you want to be able to, fix all the problems, right? If somebody asks you, yeah, you can have my house, right? But we're not there yet, So I think you can be humble. You can look at that experience and say, okay, I'm not going to just get depressed. I'm not just going to give up, right? I'm going to use this as a way to say, hey, maybe I couldn't do it now, but I see the path. I'm inspired by, people who I know are on the path, who are practicing the path successfully, right? And so I'm going to just, I'm not going to let this set me back. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying. It's hard. It's really hard. But we can't just give up. Anything else? Anything you'd like to share? So just a closing quote before we do the breakout sessions. Rather than becoming agitated or upset, patience might just be what we need to stay grounded and clear-headed, like a protective suit of armor, not to shield us from reality, but to help us face it with strength and resilience. Perhaps patience creates space in the mind, making room for wisdom, flexibility, and a release from rigid expectations. It might transform the way we approach adversity, allowing us to find clarity and maintain peace. So those are like the advantages of patience. Okay. Oh, I just clicked the wrong button. Okay, so we're going to try these breakout groups again. So these are the discussion questions, and try to do that. Here we go, for those of you online. Okay, so let's break out people in the room first. And so we'll just go in pairs. So we've got Courtney and Flavio, Ben, and oh my God, Claire. It starts with a C.
Carly.
Carly. Mark and I can't remember your name.
Marie Ann.
Marion?
Marie Ann.
Mary Ann.
Marie, only flip it.
Okay, that's nice. Great. Okay, and then where should we go this way? No, we'll go this way. Okay, So we've got Jennifer, and your name again?
Ida.
Ida. Okay, I don't think I mentioned. I mean, I remember you from last week, but I don't think I caught your name last. Okay. And then we've got, let's see. Oh, okay. So we're going to do Wes and Judy, right? Okay. So Wes and Judy. So Wes is behind you. And Ernesto and Suzanne? Susie. Okay. Ernesto and Susie. And then we've got Steve and John, right? Whew. Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. So these are the questions and let me, okay, so right now it is 10:50, so we're gonna go to like 5 minutes after 11. And so you can take a minute to just introduce yourself if you don't know each other already. And just, in a very casual, informal way, just share some thoughts about these questions. So how can we cultivate patience for leaders who are causing suffering on a global scale? That's a good question. And why are sentient beings, all living beings, equally important on our spiritual journey as the Buddhas themselves? So sentient beings includes human beings, but also like animals and the like. All right. Okay, so why don't you, if you want to spread out in the room, you're welcome to do so. For you online wonderful people and patients. Hang on 1 second.
No.
Okay. Can you guys just say it?
I appreciate it. Like, I love giving creativity vibes and
Like creating groups. My problem is I can't tell if you're actually there.
oh, bad.
Groups, and if it's a problem, if it looks like you're not quite in, then I'll move.
No, it's not. It's cool. It's cool. I made my grandmother gave me a nice camera, whatever. It has to. It was really like okay.
Now just one person.
See, I think it's the excitement. Like, I love the idea of like almost like a dark room. And like, change the eyes to like the negatives. Like,
If you have any problems, I think you can investigate. Okay. You have to actually join us.
so
There's something I'm trying to get better at. You said that. We're so there.
for that. I volunteered in the Dharma shop in the care, like, so much good. That would be a really big help. So it's actually amazing with this like document. I think too is like we're starting in Instagram, I think for the top. And I was like, oh no, how do and then we're gonna swap information. That'd be amazing. And it's so interesting that I mentioned when these are super it's like we feel the spring time, like we think it's negative experience, it's your conference spin, it's like soaking on like no, it's so clear, like they just have to just the negative it's a super exciting This place is incredible.
Yeah. I think that's.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And then you found some later. Amazing. We've heard.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, especially when you brought up in something like the Abraham.
I generally like
I felt almost liberated. You know, my family isn't religious. Why? Inside ways. You know, and it was like, if you're treated like, if you do this, you're punished for life. If you don't do this, you're
Right.
they're like not finding that, but it's like, and it's really important that teachers like, I don't know, it's right. That I would just. It's my first time. Which is
Yeah, like.
Oh, good question. Okay, Anila, I'm so sorry, the questions disappeared. Oh, there they are. Yeah.
Are the most
I think, yeah.
It's just as important. It's not even so frustrated
I know, it's the thing.
Yeah.
Puppies, they're like kids. Yeah. So it's just not fun with them. I think that ties into the second question pretty well too, where it's like, you know, on our own path, and there's things that because we're talking about patience, right? You are. They're testing for patience because other sentient beings in this path. Yeah.
It's
It's a very. Like if I examine all the expectations.
Yeah. That's a great thing to realize, especially I think when we talk about parents. A lot of things we have to keep on there. And it's not fair. No, right, like this it's not fair to put that narrative against
Like I expected.
just realize that it's a lot of this is my dad is incredibly famous.
That's the biggest thing I realized in this class.
Like it's matching that. Yeah. Yeah, that's so dichotomy.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I know to always like stuff when I grew up. They just sorry. It's hard to read, but there's not about it. interfering, how could it be? Where I'm not and so, right, I have everything on this, you know, and this house. And my corner video was like, and then I'm not sure. No, I like realize that you're doing that. And that is.
I'm sure they don't want to sit there and kill the tree. Yeah.
So like I certain
That's what you do. And yes, I was very large office. But one thing, bureaucracy, you do this.
like you start to day with one thing is not as even way to next action.
And I feel like you said this interesting because it's hard to understand and they are also related.
It's just like just because they don't like the in terms of like this, because of the expectation of things. But I also like to respect.
You see yourself like this thing. And it's what you want to do.
Has a balance like some bonds and just very. There's countless this idea of deciding the difference of the next is something you have on it.
Yeah.
On me.
It's like I have a certain say on my stick to my I think could be close.
Hard to give that up. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, like this is. Yeah,
Growing up, that's my just the expectations so much when you ultimately like crushes me. It's like I
so many. There's a lot of work.
Keep you in mind because I think it's a fresh Oh, you do, $90. Yeah. There's a family space, but they're more, I'm trying to thinking about that now, right? It's like, my dad's. Oh, Vancouver, okay.
Yeah.
Like on the link to the investment.
Yeah.
So that's a big
Sometimes I buy just and
you know, why it's always hard to live.
Oh, wow, so that's like the opposite. Yeah, okay. See it like everybody's great. Oh, it's okay.
Well, and there is so much yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit. It was. I spent a lot of my time thinking about what kind of something that my dad had. Him and I did not. It's got a really bad relationship. It's okay. He's a narcissist.
And like they.
And he's also a lot of I think about how much I just.
Yeah.
The point is that like this is what I want to do. But he's like, no, you need to. So he's like, I basically I create your style. And I scientific art
And like they moving teachers, like I really don't know how big or small.
and the answer is no. But
Yeah.
that was after 5 years ago. And I felt like so I'll say this, like I used to work at small clinics. And this one makes sense. The attorney that we had, like we were the client, or we were the attorney, the client, but like that. So my job was to file small claims lawsuits against other people keep their. And I felt horrible. Doing that job, where I just want to help them. I just and I think it's back and like I'm mad at this person. So again, it's rewiring my brain. Like using empathy. And like I can't do that. Yeah.
You're really around how they just keep going.
I don't know. Size of it, also like you know, and
Right.
It's like
You know, one that likes to do.
I love you should have a good
About a minute left.
Yeah, of course. It's like I yeah, link up yeah, so don't do that. So the holiday shop that we're doing is started, but I'm like,
Okay, it's about time to wrap up, please.
7:30 December. So I got the stuff. I just think
Back.
once the social media goes like around that. But there's yeah. Oh, for okay. Yeah. Yeah. What's up? Yeah. What's that? Cost of living. No, you're telling me. Hey, Courtney. Good, how are you?
Hey, so I hope that was a good discussion. It seemed like everybody was participating and sharing their ideas, so that was helpful. In terms of my own 2 cents on these questions, which are they're both extremely important. The first one, how can we cultivate patience for leaders who are causing suffering on a global scale? So this is an opportunity for us to think of all of these people as again equal to us and wanting to be free from suffering and to and to find happiness. thinking of the suffering that they may be undergoing right now, even though they're, billionaires. They're not, they're certainly experiencing some form of stress and anxiety and fear, just as we are. And more importantly, perhaps, is thinking that as they are responsible for creating, suffering for other beings, then in the future, we can't even imagine the kind of suffering that they will experience as a result of those actions. Again, not just in this life, but in the future. And the Buddhist teachings about karma are very, extensive and detailed, and that's something that's worth studying when you have a chance. And then the second question, sentient beings are equally important in our spiritual journey as the Buddhas, because, they are the grounds or the basis to enable us to practice, all of the guidelines that we've been talking about, right? So we need sentient beings as our teachers, as our practice partners, right? So that we can generate, and practice being patient, right? If nobody's yelling at us, if nobody's, tugging on our clothes and dragging us down the street, or, if you're trying to walk a big dog, then you have no opportunity to improve your leash walking skills. Oh, whatever it might be, right? And so on the Buddhist path, of course we need to understand the Buddhist teachings to the point where we generate, devotion and faith and conviction in the path leading us out of suffering, out of samsara, right? But that's not enough, right? So blind faith alone, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always tells us, right? We can make beautiful offerings to the Buddhas. We can shower them with the finest fragrances and like incense and clothing, etc., right? But the Buddhas don't need material offerings, right? So it's an opportunity for us to practice generosity, to do these beautiful, make beautiful extensive offerings, to spend hours and hours, doing prayers. All of that is a method for training our minds, for sure, right? But what the Buddhas really want us to do is to help others, right? To serve others. Okay. So now for the guided meditation. Oh, did I click the wrong button? Guided meditation on patience. So rest comfortably on your chair or your cushion. Turning your attention to the breath. Allowing it to rejuvenate every cell of your body. And then think about what patience means to you. Consider a recent experience when you practiced patience. How did it feel when you applied patience in that situation? Instead of getting angry or annoyed, you practiced patience. So in this meditation, we're going to explore an exercise called pre-framing to see if it can be useful as a way of applying patience. So bring to mind an upcoming event or situation that causes you discomfort or concern, something that hasn't happened yet. And pinpoint something specific about that situation, like whether it's a meeting or getting together with family for the holidays, whatever it might be. So consider the situation in terms of, how it's going to come about. Why is it important? What are your hopes, your expectations, your concerns? Who else is involved, and what might their hopes, their expectations, and fear look like? Remind yourself that this future event is currently just a thought in your mind. And visualize your mind as a clear blue sky with your hopes, your fears, your expectations as passing clouds. Focus on the blue expanse of the sky. That openness, that spacious feeling. That feeling of stability and calmness. Notice any changes in your body or breathing as that sense of openness and spaciousness expands. If any resistance arises, and gently acknowledge that without judgment. Just let it go. And then return to that challenging situation. What makes it difficult? And imagine bringing patience into the moment. Calm, steady, spacious. With that frame of mind, shift your perspective. Could patience affect the outcome in a positive way? And so we'll close this meditation with a funny quote from Muhammad Ali, who said, "It isn't the mountain ahead that wears you out. It's the pebble in your shoe." Keep that in mind. How do we get rid of that pebble? Okay. Great. Hmm. Anything that you'd like to share as we wrap up?
That was really helpful, Anila. Thank you.
Great. It's a good reminder, I think. Everybody says, patience is a virtue. We all know we have to be patient, but when you really stop and break it down and try to think of how we can really put it into practice, really watching our minds, really being on track of things, right? So many opportunities to be patient. And, being willing to just allow those smaller things that come up, those minor differences in opinion, just letting it go sometimes, right? Not getting caught up in that. It's okay, right? Because a lot of times situations come down to, it may be as simple as, oh, I really wish my mom would take her pill, but she doesn't want to take her pill. And then it becomes more like, not just about the pills, but it's like, well, you're telling me to take the pill, like that kind of stuff, right? So that's where the patience and understanding, that listening, what's really going on here is important, right? John?
Well, I think a lot of times people don't take action until they get angry. So
Okay.
that's kind of a problem with it, that you should take action, but you know, a lot of times it doesn't happen until you get that energy from getting angry. And that's when it's kind of gets the slippery slipper, you know. I guess you gotta kind of dial it back at that point.
Right, right. So watching the mind, and the minute the situation, starts to arise, then trying to address it before it gets out of control. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me just put up the slide that shows the additional resources if you'd like to learn more about the 16 guidelines, and highly encourage you to take a look at this program. The meditation course includes all of the 16 guidelines. They're exactly the same format that we presented today, including the meditation transcript itself. While I was reading from it. There are materials for not just for adults, but teens, kids. There's a book, there's a website. It's really a beautiful presentation. So please take advantage of that. It's all free. And then in terms of dedication of merit, so we dedicate all of the positive energy that we've created by coming together today to learning more about ourselves and the Buddhist teachings on how we can practice all of these qualities that are so important for our relationship with ourselves and others. So we dedicate all of that positive energy for the welfare of all living beings, so that we can continue to make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Thank you, Anila. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Anila.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where are